let's start with Michigan and the hiring of Kyle Whittingham. He steps away from Utah, and then all of a sudden he shows up, and here he is now announced as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. This was massive, and I got to tell you, a little bit out of left field. I had not heard his name. It was very quiet. It was below the surface. Give Ward Manuel a lot of credit on this one and everyone at Michigan, because this was not a name that a lot of people were floating around, including myself. Listen, I love this hire, but I love this hire not just because I'm very fond of Kyle Whittingham and his style of coaching and his style of play in terms of the way his teams play, but because of what Michigan was facing in this entire ordeal. And let's break this down, because listen, there were many challenges, and I think we all understand that, but there were a lot of challenges to what's transpired at Michigan that led them to Kyle Whittingham. The first three challenges I think are fairly obvious, okay? The first one being the timing. The timing of this had to go fairly quickly. Why? Because that January 2nd transfer portal opening up, you've got to retain the roster, right? Like, there are roster implications to who your head coach is, when he's hired, and what he can do, and what he can do in terms of retaining and recruiting the current players. So the quick timing of this, in particular after everything that transpired with Sharon Moore, and it goes down and it's messy, and the only way to describe what went on at Michigan is crisis. This was a crisis at Michigan, and all of these challenges are what made it a crisis. The timing was crisis, and they were in a management situation, and that January 2nd transfer portal window was looming. It was looming out there next week. I think they also had a challenge in terms of play identity. Okay, so you've got to go backwards before you can go forwards on this one, because remember, post-COVID, when Michigan went on this run that they've been on, maybe not the last couple of years, but certainly under Harbaugh, that culminated in a national championship, this run was a very specific identity in terms of a blueprint that they used on the field. Now, it was a bit of a throwback blueprint. It had everything to do with toughness and physicality. It had everything to do with complementary play. And that was an identity that I think they wanted to retain. And they needed to retain in a big way because, and I've said this before, they had a huge mountain to get over. And that mountain lived in Columbus, Ohio. And Michigan had to do something about the Ohio State problem. Because Ohio State, they were building a team every single year, and the point of that team was always to win a national championship. And so they would look at teams like Alabama and Georgia, and it's like, okay, how do we build a team that can compete with and against and beat those teams? Because those are the teams that you had to beat in 20, 21, 22 in order to win a national championship. That's what Ohio State was doing. Meanwhile, Michigan's problem wasn't winning a national championship at that point. It was Ohio State. They couldn't beat the Buckeyes. And so they went about building an identity and a culture in terms of a play identity and a play culture that leaned into the toughness and the physicality and the run game. And they built an identity that was specifically tailored to try to go out and beat Ohio State. And they were able to do that. They were able to do that 4 straight times, running the football, controlling the game with their defensive line. And that type of play style and identity is something that I think that they really wanted to retain. That's a challenge. That's a huge challenge. Think of all the teams in the past and the programs in the past that have gone about hiring a coach, and you could even argue, oh man, that's a good hire. These coaches are good coaches. Nebraska tried to do that with Bill Callahan. It went sideways. Michigan tried to do that with Rich Rodriguez. It went sideways. I even made the argument that it happened with Wisconsin and Luke Fickell when Luke Fickell tried to change the schematics of the defense. He tried to go to the air raid. Now he's since trying to fix that at Wisconsin, but it certainly has gone off the rails in the first couple of years. If you change the identity of a program too drastically, I don't think it ever goes well. That's why I've always argued that fit is such a unique factor in all of these coaching hires. And so that was a challenge, is that they had a very specific play identity and they had to retain it, need to retain it, wanted to retain it. Another challenge for them was that while they wanted to retain a play identity, they needed a total culture reset and stabilization from a program perspective, from a personnel perspective. Because think of everything that has riddled this program in the last 4 or 5 years. Heck, even Biff Poggi, the interim head coach right now, trying to prepare for Texas. What did he get? He basically said it's been a disaster in the last few years. He said the last 5 years. And so a stabilization and a reset from a culture standpoint is very needed at Michigan. They're even doing an internal investigation into the culture of the athletic department at large. So that's very obvious. Well, trying to retain play identity and reset the culture from a personnel standpoint, that's like impossible to do. That's a needle in the haystack type of thing. Then you have this last challenge thrown on, which is that the timing of this, not just because of the portal, but also because it happened on the back end of the coaching carousel, means that you're in a precarious spot because the talent pool has been picked over. Think of all the coaches that have either signed extensions around the country or taken jobs because they're quality candidates. Heck, you look at coaches around the country, like, for instance, if you were to say, like, what coaches would fit at Michigan and fit this style, I would have said somebody like, well, like Matt Campbell comes to mind. Well, he already took a job at Penn State, and that's a great hire for Penn State because of all those things. Well, now he's not available for Michigan, so you're at the tail end of the cycle, which means that now the carousel is in a spot where it's not obvious who you're going to hire. And they were throwing out names like Kalen DeBoer. I heard Jeff Brom being thrown out. There was all these different names being thrown out. And the DeBoer issue was obviously because he was still coaching at Alabama, still in the playoff. And now he's going to coach all the way until January 1st. Well, the portal's opening on 2nd. So the timing crisis was there. All of these challenges were staring in the face of the Michigan administration. And here they land on Kyle Whittingham. Now, there's not many coaches in the country that fit all of those things, that allow you to say, listen, I know that timing is an issue, but we can get him in here quickly. I know play identity is an issue, but I've got somebody that fits that play identity, that style. I know our culture needs a reset and needs stabilization. I've got someone with the highest character and integrity that I can think of in the industry to reset the culture and stabilize the culture. Oh, by the way, he's also available. It's like all of a sudden they land on Kyle Whittingham. And I got to tell you, this is an incredible fit. And I, for one, assumed that he was just done coaching. Listen, I've had several conversations with Kyle over the years, and you guys, you've listened to some of the shorts, and you've listened to this podcast, I'm sure, before. You'll know that I think he is a wonderful coach, and he's got the highest integrity. I love the way that his teams play. I love the way that he talks about his players because he talks about them with love. He cares for his players. My highest compliment that I can ever repay is that, hey, I would love my sons, if they ever played college football, to go play for Kyle Whittingham. I still feel that way. And I just assumed, because of our conversations, he had said, listen, I want to spend time with my grandkids, and he's like, it's not that I'm done. I'm physically fit. I'm got energy, but maybe my time's run out here at Utah. And I'm sitting there and I just assumed that he was done. I just assumed. And this goes back to a point that I should have taken my own advice on this, because all of these coaching hires, or I should say openings that come open, you guys know this. If you've listened to this program for any length of time, you'll know this. Like, for instance, when Penn State came open this year, or when LSU came open this year, what do I always say? I say you force great candidates to tell you no before you move on. And I would say you call Urban Meyer, you call Nick Saban. I said that for LSU. I said that for Penn State. And everyone's like, oh, that's stupid. Those guys would never do it. Why? That's based on an assumption. You force them to tell you no. Chris Peterson, call Chris Peterson. Force him to tell you no. And then once he does, say, okay, great, coach. Now, can you talk with me about guys that you like around the country? So you're not only gaining information, but you're forcing him to say no, and you're not assuming, because you don't want to deal in assumptions. I was dealing in an assumption. I thought Kyle was done. Good thing for Michigan and everybody at Michigan that they didn't assume and they made the call. Because if they make the call, then Kyle has to at least contemplate whether this is a good fit for him. And now from his side, Kyle Whittingham has spent 30-plus years at Utah, building them from a mid-major program into a perennial top 15 program in the power conferences. That has taken a tremendous amount of work. There's no real reason, and I mean this with all due respect, there's no real reason that Utah, the University of Utah, should be a top 15 program in college football every single year. And yet they are. Why? Because of Kyle Whittingham. He is a winner. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. And now he's going to go to Michigan because he looks at this as an opportunity to actually go out there and compete for a national championship. I don't know if, he didn't say this verbatim, but I think that there is an underlying thing here of you can do it there. Whereas at Utah, I always felt like it was an uphill climb. Whereas Michigan, you can do it. You can go win a national title. They are funded. They've got everything that they need. Not that Utah doesn't, but it's an uphill battle, and he would know that uniquely so because he spent 30-plus years there. All right, so he goes there and he says Michigan is a special place. He says a legitimate opportunity to win a national championship. He says it's happened here. So I looked at it as a final challenge. So it makes sense for him as well. I got to tell you, at the risk of throwing out old takes is exposed here, this seems like a tremendous fit. This seems like a home run because it checks off all of these boxes, all of these challenges. And I didn't think that was possible, to be honest with you. Those are big challenges. The timing is a challenge, both in terms of the transfer portal and because of the limited pool of candidates. The play identity is a challenge because not every single coach has those types of play identity specifics. Culture reset and stabilization, that's a challenge. Any one of those four are going to be very difficult to find. And yet Kyle Whittingham checks the box in all four. I think it's an incredible fit. I think now you shift the gaze into what he's going to need to do. All right. And so when you look at him now and you say, okay, what are the two things he's got to do? And he's got to do it in a really quick fashion. Roster retention, which is a big one. And then the coaching staff, which they wanted him down there, so he went down to Orlando to start meeting with players, meeting with players' families. That's a big one. And then coaching staff. What is his staff going to look like? Because it's going to look a little bit different than what it did at Utah. I think that's pretty obvious. One, Morgan Scalley is the coach in waiting. People have asked me, do you think that it went south at Utah? No, I just think that the whole dynamic there with a coach in waiting over multiple years becomes problematic because everyone's just waiting for you to leave. And at some point, you're like, well, I guess I'm going to leave because I guess that's the plan. Even though I know in his heart of hearts, Kyle still feels like he can coach and he can coach at a high level. The challenge is going to be there. Obviously, retaining the roster, that's one of them. This is a top 10 roster in college football next year. If he can retain it, building a staff is going to be a challenge. And then the expectations at Michigan, they're lofty. And their schedule next year, not easy. Here's some of the games that they have next year. They're going to host Oklahoma, Indiana, Iowa, Penn State. They've got to go to Oregon. They've got to go to Ohio State. Those are monster games. And you better go 10-2 if you want to go to the college football playoff, because at Michigan, that's the goal. That's the goal. That's going to be the goal for him. That's going to be the goal for every single player. That's the goal for every single fan, is to go out there and compete for a national championship. I would focus on those home games. Not that you can't win at Oregon or at Ohio State. I think that that's difficult to do, but focus on the home games. He was great at home in Salt Lake at Utah, and he needs to bring that type of energy to Michigan. I don't know what Oklahoma is going to look like next year. I think the same can be said for Indiana, although we all believe Kurt Cignetti can rebuild in a quick fashion. Iowa will likely look like what they've looked like for the last 30 years. Who knows what Penn State's going to look like under Matt Campbell. So focus on those home games. I think that that's going to be very, very interesting. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.